On behalf of the University of Virginia Center for Politics, I welcome you here to the Mellon Auditorium on Constitution Avenue for our National Constitutional Convention. In the 220 years since the Constitution was written, the United States has undergone a great transformation. The 13 original states on the Atlantic seaboard have grown into 50, from sea to shining sea. Advances in transportation and communications have created an interconnected nation that shares information in the blink of an eye. Yet despite the new realities of the modern United States, our government runs under the direction of a document written in quill pen. To be certain, the Constitution remains brilliant in its overall design. The founders devised a political system that separated the powers of government, placed mutual checks on the powers each branch held, and ensured vital civil and human rights. However, as the founders themselves said at the time, the document was not perfect when it was written, and it can be argued that it is even more true after the massive changes that have occurred in America and around the world over the past 20 years, that it is no longer perfect. But let me be clear, changing the Constitution is serious business, and it's a process we dare not engage without a great deal of discussion and debate. This National Constitutional Convention is designed to start that discussion and debate. Where it goes from here depends upon the citizens of the United States, if they ever hear about it. As I argue in my new book, and as some of the other panelists argue in their books, the text of our Constitution was never intended by the founders to be sacred and untouchable. The founders wanted us to regularly review and revise the Constitution based on the experiences of our own times. Thomas Jefferson insisted no society can make a perpetual constitution. The earth belongs always to the living generation. Jefferson imagined that major constitutional reform would occur every generation, every 19 years in his time. The father of the Constitution, James Madison, agreed with Jefferson, saying that constitutional revisions would be, quote, a salutary curb on the living generation from imposing unjust or unnecessary burdens on their successors. One of the surprises that I've gotten since my book, A More Perfect Constitution, was published was a letter, unsolicited, from the current president of the James Madison Family Descendants, which is a large organization. But this particular individual lives out in California, is the closest, he claims, closest living relative to James Madison. And when I got the letter, I opened it with trepidation because I assumed that he was going to say, how dare you, leave the work of Mr. Madison alone. And in fact, I was shocked because he completely and totally endorsed the idea of a new constitutional convention, and he insisted that his long-lost relative would have strongly endorsed such a convention, that he would not have believed that it had been 220 years since we'd had one. So I was delighted to receive that letter, and we'll be publicizing it widely. George Washington agreed with both Jefferson and Madison. He was straightforward when he wrote in 1797, "The warmest friends the Constitution has do not contend that it is free from imperfections. I do not think we are more inspired, have more wisdom, or possess more virtue than those who will come after us." I'm under no illusions that constitutional change will be easy. The entire document has only been amended 17 times. Certainly you count the Bill of Rights as part of the original document. Take a look around the perimeter of this room where we have some marvelous exhibits. Throughout this beautiful hall, we've invited and are joined by organizations representing each of the current 27 amendments to the Constitution. If anyone is tempted to believe that the Constitution was perfect in its original design, let's think about our friends from the National Slavery Museum, who are with us representing the 14th Amendment. During the day, I hope that those of you who are here will have a chance to visit the exhibitors. That brings us to the larger issue of why we're here today. Any effort to change the Constitution must begin with a discussion of what's right, what's wrong, and what may be missing altogether from the Constitution. How do we keep what is great while fixing what is not? By what sort of mechanism would all this constitutional change be achieved? Perhaps a generation from now. Our present Constitution outlines two ways to change it, but one of those methods, a constitutional convention, has never been used in the history of the U.S. The idea certainly sounds radical, and if so, the founders were radicals. It was outlined by them in Article 5 of the Constitution. It's been right in front of us for the last 220 years, and as you read the writings of the founders, you understand that it was their preferred method. Yes, they didn't trust Congress even in their own day. They'd already had an experience with a Congress or two. As I said, we're just here today to begin a conversation. I hope the issues that are raised today will grow into a national dialogue that will ultimately result a generation or more down the road in a more perfect Constitution.